Hello and welcome to the second installment of our specials as we build up to the REAIM Summit at The Hague, which will take place on the 15th and 16th of February 2023. What is REAIM all about? It is all about artificial intelligence in the military domain. But with these specials, we are interested in the responsible use and deployment of artificial intelligence in the military domain. My guest, Jan Nink Blok from the Red Cross here in the Netherlands, knows all about it, and I look forward to his insights in our conversation later on. But to find out how the industry is adapting to this change, what conversations are taking place within the military and defense industry about artificial intelligence in the military domain, we went to the annual exhibition of defense and security of military companies here in the Netherlands to hear what they are saying about AI in the military domain.
We develop artificial intelligence mainly to support crews in their mission and to make it more safe. That's actually our main driver. By this idea, we try to predict a little bit the future, and based from that future, we like to advise the manning what's happening next.
We deliver robots, drones, sensors. And when you have a lot of robots, drones and sensors, you create a lot of data. And then the next question is, how do you get the needle out of the haystack where you can act on, so actionable items?
So the amount of information that is coming at the operations in a modern warfare scenario, it's huge. And explainable AI can help to make the right decisions.
There is simply too much data available that without artificial intelligence you cannot make sense of it. It's not only to make sense of data which is available, but it is also to make sense out of combination all different kinds of information which you were not able to do before. And this gives a whole new range of possibilities for the users in the military or security domain to do that.
Applying AI always needs responsible behavior. So people that develop AI have to be responsible and have to be aware of what they are doing with AI. And from a European perspective, new regulation is coming into place, making sure that when you use AI, that you use it in a responsible and an ethical way.
I think industry can play a role in developing frameworks for further development by indicating what is technically possible. Also by indicating what kind of technologies are now explored and they are looking to include in their products and what those products are going to look like. And this is a two-way street, of course, because the industry will also adapt its products to the requirements and the rules that are set. But I think this can be a really interesting dialogue with benefits for both parties, actually.
And we already have a lot of autonomy in the types of capabilities that we're employing. I think we will continue to see that, that be pushed more and more into the future where we rely on the machines.
It's a race against the people who want to endanger our society, against the society who wants to defend itself against it. That's the race we are talking about.
There's always the fear of what will the computer do if we program it, right? It does what we say it has to do, but what if it starts thinking by itself and we didn't program that it has to stop somewhere?
So we are hearing from the video a whole lot of concerns that we addressed in our first edition, and even now, what if artificial intelligence within the military domain doesn't do what we want it to do? We are addressing these and other concerns. Now, we associate the Red Cross with humanitarian law. We know that in different corners of the world, the Red Cross is there protecting civilians in times of war and in peace times as well. Let's welcome Jan Nink Blok, who works for the Red Cross here in the Netherlands. So talk to us about this. You are within the realm of international humanitarian law, and it is a very, very broad sector. As far as artificial intelligence within the military domain, what are your concerns as the Red Cross?
Well, there are several concerns that we're talking about. For us, we believe that the framework of international humanitarian law is capable of dealing and addressing a lot of issues, but new developments in weapons, in means and methods of warfare always raise the question, does the legal framework still suffice for the new situation that we see now? The development of artificial intelligence is not new per se, but we do see that there is a huge spike in the application in weapon systems, but also in navigation, flight, etc. And then when it comes to the area of international humanitarian law, for us it is important to see if these developments still meet the requirements under international humanitarian law.
Mm-hmm. Just educate us a little bit about how you actually work with governments, because when we look at your work, we think as civilians you are on our side, but it is important that you continue the dialogue with governments as well. And when it comes to military action, it's not just about weapons, isn't it? It's a broad spectrum. How practically do you work with governments under this domain?
Well, let me first pick up on, you said that we're on your side. Well, first and foremost, the Red Cross is there for the victims of armed conflicts and for those who do not or no longer participate in armed conflict. That is what we're trying to ensure. And based on that, we maintain dialogues with governments all over the world, but also with other actors that are relevant in the field to discuss the issue of international humanitarian law. So when it comes to weapons, we discuss that. When it comes to concerns over protection, we discuss this.
Mm-hmm. So your focus is not just on weapons, isn't it?
No, not at all.
Okay. And then with governments themselves, do you lobby them? Would you bring the realities on the ground? In other words, given what we saw on the video, and it's a theme that keeps coming up again and again, how do you control that? How do you make sure that artificial intelligence and all areas of war and weaponry happen within a legal framework?
Well, I need to say that we're absolutely not opposed to the use of artificial intelligence in the conduct of hostilities. Mm-hmm. But we are only concerned whether or not that follows the rules of war. So that's the discussions we're having. When it comes to artificial intelligence, we see that not all areas are covered. When it comes to machine learning, for instance, we see that is a very practical aspect, and there is not much theory to it, which means that different machines may learn the same thing but may apply it in a different way. That is a concern in itself for us, because that means that we do not know if the weapon system that uses artificial intelligence will be able to apply international humanitarian law in and on itself. Mm-hmm. In addition to that, the human element is important. International law requires human beings in a prominent position as responsible in their obligations vis-à-vis international law. In this development, there is a risk that we lose contact with who is eventually responsible for the deployment of weapons that use artificial intelligence.
We are focusing in these specials on the risks and the challenges, because we really believe that open and robust dialogue is the only way we can make meaningful contribution towards those particular frameworks. Let's hear a little bit more about that.
As much as we embrace technology, it should not replace so much of what human beings are supposed to be.
I think it should be controlled in some way.
AI is like as objective as can be. I mean, it takes what we think, so we have to see who put what in the AI.
People should be in charge and should be responsible.
The ICRC believes that it is critical to ensure a human-centered approach to the development and the use of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And what that means is that human control and judgment needs to be retained.
If an automated car runs into somebody, who is responsible? If you have a guided missile, but the missile hits off course and therefore has lots of collateral damage which you did not intend, but the AI decided it was better to hit another target. Who is taking the responsibility?
AI is capable of learning in the field, which means it can change itself in the environment into something for which it was not designed. So that's online learning. So that's one of the main things which is of concern.
Can an autonomous weapon system comply to IHL? Can it make proportionality distinction between civilians and soldiers? It's not a grey area. it's a grey area if we keep making it a grey area. And by saying it's a grey area, you also say like, well, it's difficult, let's wait a little longer. And we feel we cannot wait any longer. We started a campaign in 2012, the Stop Killer Robots campaign. It's already 10 years later. And still there is no legal instrument to keep meaningful human control within autonomous weapon systems.
You can have autonomous AI surface-to-air missiles shielding from other attacks, but the day where you have fully autonomous robots in the battlefield shooting at what is moving without any sort of control or human behind it is where we are very much afraid that what IHL was founded on and based on in terms of trying to limit humanitarian consequences is breached.
So, Jan, we're hearing a whole lot of worries, a whole lot of criticisms, especially from some of your colleagues within the international space of the Red Cross, and there's a lot to ponder on. We can see that there are concerns around autonomy of the weapons, about the human factor as well. But with artificial intelligence, as in the military, we are hearing that it's not just about weapon systems. It's also about decision making. It's also about data. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is a continuation of what we perceive as the issue of artificial intelligence in weapons. It is about the human involvement. Our colleagues mentioned the human-centric approach. We do believe that at every stage in the use of artificial intelligence in weapon systems or other systems, there should be a nexus with human beings, simply because they have the obligations under international law to uphold it. An artificial intelligence-based system never has that and can never have that.
Mm-hmm. Is it too late to make contributions, to make arrangements for what is lacking? Has the horse bolted, basically?
Absolutely not. There's always time for that. And if you look at the development of international law in general, you see when it comes to humanitarian law, quite often that the law follows the reality on the ground. So the Geneva Conventions are very much based upon the realities of the Second World War, where you see large numbers of prisoners of war. Now there's a whole convention dedicated to that. The use of chemical weapons also follows experiences in armed conflict, as does the prohibition on the use of cluster munition.
Mm-hmm. In fact, one of the interlocutors in that video, Ravi Panwa, mentioned that AI is capable of learning on the field. Is that always the case? Should that inspire confidence, basically?
Perhaps confidence, but also concern, because it's a practical learning that they're doing in the field in armed conflict. Mm. And we would like to see that it's already ensured that the systems are able to follow, to be deployed within the existing legal framework, and if necessary, new rules should be developed on this.
Let's talk a little bit about the Red Cross. I said earlier when I started that my perception, and most citizens, when they hear Red Cross, they think, yes, somebody who's there to protect civilians in times of strife. Isn't the Red Cross against the use of violence in all its entirety anyway? So why are you part of a conversation around AI in weaponry? Shouldn't you be against all use of it, regardless of the domain?
I need to say no. It's not because we promote violence, obviously, but we are neutral. We're a neutral, impartial humanitarian organization, and because of that, we do not take a stance on this. We recognize the fact that armed conflicts do exist, and in armed conflict, violence is used. Mm-hmm. Based on that fact, we say there should be limits to it, and that's where we focus on.
Okay. When you assess your work, do you think the Red Cross has the power to influence governments? In fact, have you been in a situation where you look at some of the policies or how weaponry or a war is conducted and you think, we can see our influence there, even though we can't claim it publicly?
Certainly, yes. There's a number of existing treaties worldwide where the Red Cross movement, so these are our sister national societies as well as the International Committee of the Red Cross, have had a significant impact on the development and the fact that the treaty exists today. And that's treaty-based law. But we also see that we are we have influence in the political processes, on policy developments. So yes, we do see that we have a voice in these discussions around such topics.
And in the domain of international humanitarian law, I suppose it's a very complicated answer because different governments in different states act differently. But when you assess the multilateral and the international domain, do you think that the realm of international humanitarian law is something that states are taking seriously?
They must take it seriously. A world without international humanitarian law is certainly not a better world. There should always be rules applicable to armed conflict. Concerns of us are, of course, compliance when it comes to existing humanitarian law, but also the development of new instruments when we see that there is a need for such instruments.
And are you encouraged by the spirit and intentions of a summit like REAIM? Because we spoke to our first guest, Professor Lonneke, we're speaking to you, and there are all sorts of stakeholders, and the idea is to bring them together. Do you think that is possible?
I think it is a great opportunity. It is also great that it's not merely an engagement for states, but that other actors are involved in this process as well. And I do think that this could yield an important output that we can work on in the future, yes.
And speaking of output and stakeholders, let's take a look at how this topic is receiving their attention.
This is not something that should be only decided upon by states. Autonomous weapon systems or increasing autonomy or the use of AI in warfare is a matter to all of us. It's a matter to universities, to tech sector, to defense company, to states, to the public. It's up to all of us to decide what we think is acceptable and what isn't.
I think it's very important to involve the critics in the design of such systems, so that we can work together on all the weak points and to make a stronger, better system.
I still see value in an open debate with respect for each other's arguments. It's not about per se who's right, but let's identify the dilemmas and each other's take on how to approach it. What we hope to achieve is trust and understanding why we develop it and how we develop it.
The European Commission has set a good example by introducing AI regulation, AI Act, that comes up with fairly detailed regulation that is risk-based, excludes certain applications or uses of AI. I think that's a very good start. It doesn't apply to the military as yet. It's about civil applications of artificial intelligence. But I think it's an inspiring document, and we need to speed it up, definitely.
All right, so there is still a lot that needs to be done. There's still a lot of work that ought to go into crafting these international agreements. But here's the challenge. Technology is moving at an alarming speed. Do we have time to make the necessary interventions? Isn't it too late?
No, it's not too late. I agree that technology is moving fast. At the same time, when it comes to the development of the law, you do not want to design contemporary frameworks that are only applicable for the moment because of the circumstances. So when we're talking about legally binding instruments, but also about political instruments such as a political declaration, it should be broader than that. It should be able to overlook it. So the fact that there is artificial intelligence now is enough to work with and to see what sort of framework we can design to capture that.
Mm-hmm. Do we have, we always look to history to help us plan for the present and for the future. Do we have some useful references from the past that could help us navigate our way through this unknown world, as it were?
Well, there's different processes that can be taken. As I mentioned, the concept of a political declaration is always helpful. We see in contemporary history that political declarations may lead to legally binding instruments at a later stage. But it's not necessarily that there's a one-size-fits-all. It's there's different ways of arriving at the point where we need to be. And most importantly, we need to have a sufficiently large group of states that carry this, that make sure that the safeguards will be put in place make sure that there is responsible deployment of artificial intelligence.
So if you were in charge of the REAIM summit in February, how would you put it together from what would constitute a successful outcome in your mind?
I will focus then on the last bit of your question. The first bit is too difficult. But a successful outcome would be the definition of elements. If there could be a substantive discussion on what artificial intelligence is and what artificial intelligence in the military domain actually means, and there's consensus among the participants on such concepts, I think that would be really helpful for processes that would follow a conference such as this.
All right, well, we thank you so very much for sharing your insights on this very, very important topic. And we are obviously keeping tabs on the REAIM Summit and to see what stakeholders do actually come up with. So thank you so very much, Jan Nink Blok, for talking to us on our special today.
Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see, there's still a lot of work to be done to get the world onto suitable international agreements when it comes to the responsible use of artificial intelligence within the military domain. The government of the Netherlands and their partner, the Republic of Korea, are coming together, bringing you the REAIM Summit, where industry players, and that is companies that are working in the military domain, governments, policymakers, academics, and international organizations like the Red Cross will be making their input. Remember, you can register for the REAIM Summit that will be taking place at The Hague here in the Netherlands on the 15th and 16th of February.